Hi students, this is Miss Wendt, and this is the video for part 1 of your cell notes. Okay, there's no worksheet for this, so you are going to write this down on notebook paper in whatever format you like. You can color code it, you can highlight it, draw little pictures. All those things are great to do in your notes to help you remember things. After each part of the cell notes, there will be an open note quiz on Schoology that you'll take when you finish each part. So let's get started with part 1. Okay, so our goals with these are we want to be able to state the 3 parts of cell theory, and we want all the students to match cell organelles to their functions. And the word function means job. So what job do each of these parts do? Okay, so that's what we want to try to do by the end of the week. Now, the next slide, don't draw it yet, just listen, okay? So don't pause the video and go crazy drawing because we're not there yet. This picture, and it doesn't even fit on my whole screen right now, this plant cell picture is something we're going to draw in another part of the cells. Okay, and if you have some colors, that's fantastic. If you want to do it electronically, that's fine, but I think with drawing it by hand with colored pencils is the easiest. So I'm just giving you a heads up that later this week, if you can come across some colored pencils or markers or crayons, that would make your life easier. They're not required, but I think drawing this picture and being able to color code things is a lot easier. The picture we draw will not be exactly like this, so don't copy this one. Okay, but just giving you a heads up that that's going to be coming in a couple days. All right, whoops, sorry about that. So this is what we do want to write. Okay, so this is the first thing we're writing. So we're talking about cell structures. So that's the pieces that are used to build cells and their functions or their jobs. Okay, and to start with, we have something called cell theory. And there are 3 parts to cell theory. Remember, a theory in science is something that many scientists over many, many years with hundreds of experiments have all come to the same conclusion that this seems to be true all the time. Okay, so it's something that's never been proven wrong. It may be proven wrong in the future, but it's unlikely just because of how many people have done experiments and supported this with their research and ideas. Okay, so cell theory has been around for almost 300 years. When microscopes were first invented and we first saw cells, people came up with ideas of it. And these are 3 things that people have always seemed to find true about cells. So here's the first one. All living things are composed of 1 or more cells. So please write this down in your notes. All living things are composed of 1 or more cells. And we talked about that the very first week of school, that all living things are made of cells. So any sample of a living thing that we've looked at under a microscope for 250 years has all been made of cells. There's been no exceptions. Okay, now if we find life on Mars, we might have to adapt some things. We may have to change what our ideal of, sorry about that, what our idea of life is. But as of all the info and all the data we see here on planet Earth, all living things are composed of 1 or more cells. Okay, the second part of cell theory says cells are the basic unit of structure and function of all living organisms. Okay, so this word here, structure, this is what we're built with. Okay, so cells are our building materials. So your bones, your skin, your muscles, all of you is built with cells. And function means job. So all the jobs in your body breaking down food, making hormones, making more cells, growing hair, growing skin. All of those jobs your body does is also done with cells. So cells are the basic unit that your body uses for building things, and cells are the basic unit that your body does to do all the jobs that you do in your life. That's what that second statement means. Cells are the basic unit of structure and function of all living things. Okay, now the third part of cell theory here, number 3. Cells come from pre-existing cells, with cells passing copies of their genetic material onto their daughter cells. All right, there's a lot to unpack here. If you don't know this word here, pre-existing, that means already here. So if you see a brand new cell, it came from a cell that was already here, like a parent cell. And the cells pass copies of their genetic material, that's another word for DNA, onto their daughter cells. Now, daughter cell, for some reason back in the day, scientists called all new cells or new baby cells daughter cells. It doesn't mean they're female or a girl or they have girl parts. That's not a thing. Cells are not boy or girl. They're just neutral. But for some reason, traditionally, they've called new baby cells daughter cells. So we still use that language today, but it doesn't mean anything about it being a boy or girl. It just means that it's a new baby cell. Okay, so number 3, cells come from pre-existing cells, with cells passing copies of their genetic material onto their daughter cells. So a new cell comes from an older parent cell, and that new baby cell has copies of DNA from the parents. That's what number 3 means. Okay. Now, I'm going to tell you right now, on your next test and quiz, and the one after it, and the one after it, you're going to have a question that says, list the 3 parts of cell theory. It's not multiple choice. It's not true, false. It's spit them out of your memory and put them onto paper. You have to memorize this. Okay, this is super important. Every biology class you might take from here on out, whether it be in high school or college, this stuff's important. Okay, we're going to learn more about how cells are used to build body parts. You're going to learn more about the jobs that cells do for you. We're going to learn how cells reproduce from pre-existing cells. We're going to learn a lot more about DNA. So we're going to keep coming back to this over and over again. So these 3 parts of cell theory you need to memorize. Okay, you're going to see them in your future. So if you need a little more time to write, please pause the video. Otherwise, we are going to continue on. All right, there are 2 kinds of cells, prokaryotic and eukaryotic. Okay, go ahead and write that in your notes. There are 2 kinds of cells, prokaryotic and eukaryotic. Now, you do not have to draw this picture, but I like this picture a lot. It's from what's called a TEM, a transmission electron microscope. Really high tech, something that you'd find like at a fancy university like Harvard or MIT, or maybe like the Mayo Clinic or the Sanford Cancer Center or something like that. So they take great images, like 3-dimensional images of cells. So this top one here, this little pink guy, this is a bacteria cell. And there's a little dark region here where the DNA is. And you can see it has a cell wall around it. And this is a bacillus shape, if you remember that from our activity the other day. And then this bottom one here, this is a eukaryotic cell, and it's much bigger in size. It has a nucleus, which is a dark center, and all this stuff inside the nucleus is DNA. And you can see there's lots of other things. There's like a blue thing here, and there's a different kind of blue thing here, and kind of a green thing and a light blue thing. Kind of like a brown circle. And there's all these like wavy lines in here. I mean, the cell is full. There's no empty space in here. Okay, so eukaryotic cells are full of all these different rooms and pockets and little organs in here. And it has a big nucleus. Our bacteria cell is pretty boring looking in comparison. Okay, so when we talked about with that activity the other day, this would be our one-room apartment. Does the job, not real exciting. This is our huge mansion. And all these little pockets that I circled, all these different parts, are going to be the different rooms where things happen. All right, but the only thing you have to write on this page is what I underlined here. There are two kinds of cells, prokaryotic and eukaryotic. So let's compare these guys. How are they the same? How are they different? All right. So prokaryotic cells, they are small. They are relatively simple, so they don't have very many parts, and they do not have a nucleus. And a nucleus would have a membrane, which is like a skin around it to kind of hold it all together. So membrane brown is an adjective. You don't need it. You could just say it does not have a nucleus, and that would be okay. So they're small, simple, no nucleus. And an example of this would be a bacteria cell. Okay, so you saw these in your activity the other day. Small, simple cells are like bacteria cells. And I have an example of one here. We're going to draw one in part 2 of your notes. We're going to draw a bacteria cell and label the parts there. Okay, so it's simple, but it does have some parts we want to know. Not all the parts listed in this picture we need to know, so don't worry about this picture. So they're small, simple cells, not a lot of parts, do not have a nucleus. Bacteria is the example. Okay, and remember, you can always pause the video if you need to if I'm going too fast. Now, eukaryotics are the other kind of cell, and they have many organelles. Okay, that's this word here, organelles, and that means little organs. So like in your human body, you have a heart and a liver and a kidney, and they all do different jobs to keep you alive. Well, organelle is a little organ, like a tiny organ that would be in a cell. And just like in your body, they all do different jobs. So in your body, you have lungs to get oxygen and a stomach to digest food. Eukaryotic cells have kind of the same thing going on. Lots of little organs to do those different jobs. So these guys are more complex. They have more moving parts. They have a true nucleus. That's what the U in eukaryotic means, is true. And for examples, any kind of plant, animal, or fungus, these would all be eukaryotic cells. So I'm going to show you some pictures. You do not have to make any of the pictures, but we are going to make a chart, somewhat called a T-chart, and a Venn diagram to compare prokaryotic and eukaryotic. You don't necessarily have to put them in your notes. If you find them helpful, I would copy them. You're going to see some of the same information repeated. So, you know, if you already have a piece of info in your notes, you don't necessarily have to redo it. So I'm going to kind of show you examples of how to organize this stuff. Write down what you think is useful, but don't worry about writing down everything. Okay? So this is called a T-chart. So I have a line down the middle, and then a line across the top, so it looks like a letter T. And on the left side, I have prokaryotic cells. On the right side, I have eukaryotic cells. And a T-chart is a way to compare things. Okay? So for example, our prokaryotic cells, bacteria is an example. We know they're very small, they're simple, they have no nucleus. So that's some of the same info we already put in your notes. But in this chart, we can compare it to eukaryote and see how they're different from each other. Okay, so eukaryotic would be plants and animals. They are bigger, they are more complicated, and they do have a nucleus. Okay, so you can see they're kind of opposites of each other for these traits. So if you think writing the info like this is useful, you can pause the video and copy this. If you think you got it, we are going to move on. Okay, another type of chart is called a Venn diagram. And this one you might want to put in your notes more than the T-chart. Okay, so a Venn diagram is when you have two circles and we put everything that's true about prokaryotic on one side, eukaryotic on the other side, and the things they have in common go in the middle. Okay, so this is what the setup would be. And I wrote out some phrases here that I'm going to drag over to where they belong. Okay, now this would make a fantastic test question if I could give you paper pencil tests. I would give you this Venn diagram and say, write down some facts and put them in the right place. But it's kind of hard with a multiple choice test. But Mrs. Wentz got some ideas of how to make it work. All right, now I have two kind of opposite phrases here. So one of them is probably prokaryotic, one's probably eukaryotic. And I know that prokaryotic cells are bacteria, eukaryotic are plants and animals. And from the activity I did the other day, I know that sometimes the plants and animals had cell walls. Specifically, plants do, but animals don't. But my bacteria cells all had a cell wall. So I could put those in there, however you like to organize stuff. I know, I learned from my activity that one of the things they have in common is they both have cytoplasm inside. That's the liquid that everything floats in. Let's see, nucleus and no nucleus. Prokaryotic is no nucleus. Eukaryotic does have a nucleus, so I would organize those. I know that they both have DNA. They're both living things. All living things have DNA. The other things I know that all cells have, I learned that all cells have ribosomes, and all cells have a cell membrane. So those four things are true for all cells, so they're going to go in the middle. I got some opposite words here, larger and smaller. My prokaryote cells are smaller and simpler. My eukaryotic cells are larger. And then the organelles, the little organs, I need a big cell to fit all those organs. So that's going to go over there by eukaryotic. Okay, so this chart here is a nice comparison of some things that are the same and different about prokaryotic and eukaryotic cells. So you may want to pause the video and copy that into your notes or organize the info in a different way. That's totally cool. But I can make a test question out of every phrase in here if I wanted to. We really want you to know this info and compare these two types of cells to each other. All right, do not make these pictures here. I'm just kind of showing you this is a typical animal cell. You can see there's lots of organs inside. It's completely full. This is an animation here. You're going to be learning and drawing some of these parts in the future. We're not going to learn all of them due to time and with the distance learning thing. So just realize that, you know, if you take a picture like this, there's some things out here that we're probably not going to talk about just due to time. Okay, same thing with our typical plant cell here. It's very full of things. There's a really big kind of water balloon in the middle called a central vacuole. There's some green things in here, and that makes sense because plants have green leaves. So we're going to be drawing out some plant, animal, and bacteria cells in future notes. But this part here is the end of part 1. We have learned the difference between prokaryotic and eukaryotic cells, and we have learned the 3 parts of cell theory. Okay, so I'm going to kind of put that in our notes here. We have learned 3 parts of cell theory and the difference between prokaryotic and eukaryotic cells. Okay, and we did an activity kind of comparing prokaryotic and eukaryotic. So what we talked about today is kind of a review from that activity, but we're putting it in our notes so it's solid and we can review. So your job right now, go to Schoology, take the Cell Notes Quiz Part 1. It is open note. The point is to get you to watch this video and take notes. So if you did that, you should be able to get 100% on the quiz. So go give it a try, see how it goes. And that is the end of this video. Have a great day, guys.